sharing my.
We see you. Yes.
All right. And I'm going to get Jaya. Retry now. The speakers to retry now joining.
Okay.
And hang tight. Keep on the speakerphone. And hi, everybody.
Looks like it might be coming back here.
Yeah, slowly. Hi, everybody. We're just waiting for our speakers to join. Speakerphone. And hi, everybody.
Looks like it might be coming back here.
Yeah, slowly. Hi, everybody. We're just waiting for our speakers to join. Speakerphone. And hi, everybody.
Looks like it might be coming back here.
Yeah, slowly. Hi, everybody.
Sorry.
We're just waiting for our speakers to join the speakerphone. And hi, everybody.
Looks like it might be coming back here.
Yeah, slowly. Hi, everybody. All right. Yes. Yep. Hang on a sec. I'm just going to give them the link again. Yes, I'm here. I'm just giving them the link again. They are getting swirly little notes here. So hang on tight.
All right, we hear you, Diane. So I'm gonna let you take it away.
I'm almost there, folks. We're just getting our speakers in. We had a bit of a background issue with. All right, folks, we're just having some technical difficulties in this new virtual world. So while we're doing this, I'm going to make Stu say jokes on stage, hopefully, and we'll keep the line moving here and try and get our folks in from around the world where they're joining us. The next speaker is from the TIAA, the Teachers Annuity Funds folks. They are actually California based, so they're not too far from you, but they didn't make it in person. So let's see if they get there. One. Jerry is joining me. Hello there, Jaya.
Yeah, I'm here. So I'm giving Aradhana the same link. So
perfect. Thank you for your patience with our process.
No problem.
An interesting day, everybody who's out there in the virtual land. There's about 300 folks watching virtually and a bunch of folks in person in Los Angeles. So we've been having fun with AV and sound and live streaming all of this at the same time. Yes. But it's actually, we've had some great talks. We only had one where we couldn't get the sound working so far, but
I think hopefully Aradhana should be joining shortly.
Yep, just takes a minute. And are you driving the slides?
Yeah, I'm going to drive the slides. She'll just talk to them. This way we don't keep switching and all that. So
perfect.
Yep. Cool.
And we're getting there. I'm just it always takes a minute for once the backstage is to generate and check the AV and do all the sound checks. So she's probably in the loop somewhere.
So I'm going to tell her to click the ask for share button.
There she comes now.
Oh, she's
yep, she's coming. And look at that.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Yes. All right, everybody. We managed to do it again. I am really psyched. Jaya, how about if you share your screen now too, so that we get all three of our faces and the screen on there, and then I will let you guys rip through your talk, and then we'll keep we'll keep the panel open and running for the next speakers as well. So if John Fortin or Stephen Boyd are listening in right now, don't worry. So
Okay.
see if you can share a screen.
Yeah, let me do this. That's entire screen. Not that one. Okay. Can you see the screen?
There it comes. I'm looking at your GitHub repo.
Can you see?
I can see your
You don't
screen,
see
but
the
I
slides though.
do not see slides. I see your GitHub repo, which is a great place for everybody to find out more about open cluster management.
Okay. So hang on 1 second. Stop sharing and share. See, I was trying to share the window. Maybe I may have to just share the entire screen, I think.
I know we can be very, very afraid of everything that's on the back side of your screen too. So I am not showing my screen today, folks. I have YouTube running. I've got like 5 other screens open at the same time. So it's a little
Oh,
crazy.
you are not in Vegas either, huh?
I didn't go to Vegas. I'm not getting married, and I'm not in Los Angeles either. I'm up in Vancouver, British
I think
Columbia.
that didn't
There
work.
you go. Now just
Oh,
go to your.
cool.
I think
There
it's.
we go.
I'm going to
Oops.
just share the entire screen because it's not working. Okay, let's just
Try
do it.
seeing your slides. They were there for
Okay.
a second.
Can you see the slides?
It's coming, and there
Yes,
you go.
we
Put it,
can.
put it in presentation mode. And without any further ado, I am really psyched to have the TIA folks here and Jaya, who has been working with TIA to talk about policy management and how they're leveraging that in their cloud security services. Aradhana, thank you very much for your patience with our process, and everybody in the audience. Please take it away, introduce yourselves, and I will go off camera for now.
Thank you, Diane. Good afternoon, all. My name is Aradhana Chittal. I am Senior Director, Exec for Cloud Security at TIAA. I'm also co-chair for CNCF Tag Security and Cloud Security Alliance Serverless Working Group. Jaya?
Thank you, Aradhana, for joining this session. Hi, everyone. I'm Jaya Ramanathan. I'm the Chief Security and Governance Architect within Red Hat and also a distinguished engineer. My passion right now is policy-based governance and policy management and such, which is what we're going to talk about today. Go ahead, Aradhana.
Sure. So let's step back and look at an enterprise today, especially a regulated financial enterprise. We have some traditional applications, right? Every regulated entity or traditional enterprise has all those applications which have grown over time. And then they have cloud platforms, possibly multi-cloud. Every enterprise is multi-cloud literally now. And then there are efforts going on where you have to refactor your traditional applications into containers so you can increase the velocity of deployments. At the same time, there are challenges from a security and compliance perspective because you have all these different flavors of cloud platforms and container platforms and your traditional enterprise IT, where the existing tools may not work in another cloud environment or may not work in a container platform. So the retooling of all the security controls, etc., is quite an amount of work and a challenge. And then having security seamlessly deployed with consistent policies across your IT estate is another big challenge for enterprises today. And let's talk about regulatory compliance. Not only do we have internal auditors, that is the second and third line of defense, who are auditing our environments constantly and identifying any gaps or risks that we need to mitigate, but then we have external entities like OCC and FRBV and all those entities who want to look at our platforms and making sure that we are meeting all the regulatory compliance that we need to meet. So that was an overview of any traditional financial organization or any regulated body, and we are no different at TIAA. So we are also multi-cloud. We have leveraged OpenShift as our on-prem private cloud, where we are using it as a playground for our developers to go ahead and refactor our enterprise applications into microservices so we can do digital transformation at the same time achieve the velocity of deployment, right? Because financial applications, they change very quickly to meet the customer needs. So we need these applications to be microservices. We today it's a private cloud, but we are looking to a future roadmap item where we will be hybrid OpenShift cloud platform as well, container platform. So roughly we have about 42 clusters, about 750 odd applications, which are containerized right now, running in an OpenShift platform. The main features of OpenShift that we are using are, we recently migrated to 4.7, which provides CoreOS as the operating system, and it can be deployed on bare metal. So we wanted to get the cost efficiencies and that you can get with deployment on bare metal. At the same time, we wanted automation of configurations and policies that can be deployed on our container platform across the estate, and use Istio, to build microsegmentation between applications as another layer of defense. So we can reduce our attack surface and give developers the freedom to go do their development and explore changes within their own little microsegment. So that is pretty much a high-level summary of what we use OpenShift for today and what our journey has been for OpenShift. Thank you. Over to you, Jaya.
Thank you, Aradhana. So I think as Aradhana highlighted, right, if you look at any customer who is adopting cloud, they are typically moving toward a hybrid model. And they also have to meet various enterprise standards, both internal as well as external regulatory compliance and so on. So then if you think about how customers are achieving these goals, right, they have to worry about every layer of the stack. So they have to start at the operating system level, then the container platform, then the middleware, then their applications. And typically, they have to make sure that all these layers are configured properly to meet their enterprise standards and external regulatory compliance requirements, and also successfully pass audits. So really, if you think about a person who is managing this environment, right, the site reliability engineer or the ops person, they are really not experts in every aspect of even security or resiliency or software engineering. And if you consider all those aspects that a customer needs to think about, they're not experts in everything, right? So the idea here is, in order for them to really meet all these requirements and do it in a cost effective manner, really what needs to happen is we need to make this easy for them using automation and tools, right? And the way to make it easy is to codify those best practices as policies and manage policies just like you would manage source code. So that's the whole premise behind policy-based governance. So from a Red Hat point of view, this is an initiative that we have been pushing for a while. And we have this capability available today as part of our Red Hat Advanced Cluster Management for Kubernetes product offering. It is also available in our Red Hat OpenShift Plus bundle, which bundles ACM and also includes Advanced Cluster Security, which is a recent acquisition of StackRox, which is now rebranded as ACS, and Quay. So this policy-based governance capability is available through these product offerings. And I also have links here on various blogs we have on this topic, as well as we also have a CNCF sandbag project submitted for this as well, that is slated to be reviewed in November this year. So let me highlight a little bit about what are the key capabilities of policy-based governance. What are the things you need? First, if you think about any customer, including TIA, right? They are not just managing one cluster. They're typically managing multi-cluster. So really, your policy management approach has to be multi-cluster. And if you look at some of the community policy engines that are out there, like Gatekeeper, Kibana, and so on, they are single cluster engines, which are very powerful in their own right. But really, what we want to do is to enable a multi-cluster framework that allows you to ship policies to all those engines and manage them in a scalable manner. Secondly, the policy framework has to be extensible, because I don't think we are going to have one policy language, policy engine agreed upon across the planet, right? So they're going to be multiple. So you need a policy framework that can integrate multiple policy engines. So that's very important. And that's what we have in ACM. And that allows you to integrate with both Red Hat and third-party policy enforcement points. And these policy enforcement points could be examples are the OpenShift compliance operator, which comes as part of OpenShift, ACS, which is the Advanced Cluster Security Stack Cross product. It could be third-party vendors such as Sysdig and also community technologies like Kubernetes and Gatekeeper, etc. The third thing is, as I mentioned earlier, you need this policy-based governance applied across the entire stack, across all the controls. So that definitely requires a collaborative development of best practices and policies. So an active upstream community is very important. And we started one in the policy collection repo. And one of the things we're also looking at in the Kubernetes policy work group that both Aradhana and I are part of, is to bring that to that work group and foster more industry collaboration in that space. So here's the overall architecture. So you have the management hub. This is the central multi-cluster management hub that allows you to manage all the different managed clusters. So policies get deployed here, and the policies can be either authored through UI or CLI or GitOps. GitOps is the preferred methodology because then you manage policies just like you manage source code. And then the policies get deployed to manage clusters based on a concept called placement. The placement could be based on various criteria. So you could say, for example, you could assign labels to your clusters for production and development and say, apply all these policies to my dev clusters or all these policies to my prod clusters. Or you could also have application of policies based on the type of cluster, whether it's an OpenShift cluster running on Amazon versus OpenShift cluster running on Google, etc. So on the managed clusters, you have various policy enforcement points, and these provide one or more controls, and these technical controls then map to compliance standards as listed here. So that's the whole idea here. And then on the right-hand side, we are integrating with traditional enterprise IT tools, whether it is for incident management or enterprise governance risk and compliance tools, or SIMS for Security Operations Center. So because like Arthur pointed out, customers are looking at adopting container platforms as an extension to their existing IT infrastructure, right? So their existing IT infrastructure, as well as IT processes and tools, are things that you see on the right-hand side. And we want to make sure that as they adopt cloud, they can easily integrate with those as well. So I'm going to take a few minutes to just do a quick demo, just to give you a flavor of how these things work. So here is the console for the ACM product. And so you can see that the ACM product provides various capabilities. It provides cluster lifecycle, which allows you to provision clusters as well as discover clusters and bring it into ACM for management. It has end-to-end visibility, which is observability layer that allows you to monitor the performance characteristics, compliance characteristics, etc. It has an application lifecycle that allows you to define applications and then deploy them across a set of clusters, and also easily move pieces of the app as needed. And it has this governance risk and compliance piece, which is the one I'm going to focus on. So in the governance compliance piece, when you go to this panel, what you see here is at the top, you see a summary view. The summary view is based on the various standards. So when you define a policy to ACM, you can say which standards it applies to, and the policy can be applied to multiple standards, both internal and external. So that's what you're seeing here. And then we have a set of policies defined here. And you can see that we have policies for a wide variety of controls. So we have policies for etcd encryption, policies to deploy various enforcement points like Gatekeeper, the compliance operator, as well as Kubernetes. And we also have policies that Gatekeeper can enforce, as well as Kubernetes can enforce as well. In addition, we have policies for checking on certificate expiration, for example, etc. Now, the OpenShift compliance operator, which is a single cluster feature that comes as part of OpenShift, allows you to specify various security profiles, and it will then do checks on the managed cluster for those profiles. So here is an example. So CIS is one security profile it supports. And you can see that we have used ACM to configure that compliance operator to this security profile, and then it can return results, which you can view centrally from ACM, and you can see that it returns back for all the rules it checks, the things that are not compliant, it can return back those results. The other thing I wanted to highlight here is when you look at the various policies, they can be deployed either in enforce mode or inform mode. Enforce mode is basically the policy will drive the configuration to the desired state that you specified in the policy. Whereas in inform mode, it is more an audit kind of mode where if the policy is not compliant, it's just going to flag a violation. So here, as an example, the certificate policy, we have set it in inform mode. So in that case, when the violation occurs, one of the things you can also do is you can configure automation. So in this case, this automation is specifying an Ansible playbook. And this Ansible playbook is generating a Slack notification. So by doing this, we are able to trigger notifications. This is in the architecture chart I showed you on the right-hand side where we can integrate with enterprise processes. So for policy violations, now you can generate, you can open tickets. For example, we also have integration with ServiceNow, or you can generate a Slack message. This then allows you to action those things per the enterprise processes. So this is what I refer to as automated governance. So not only can you trigger automation to get to the desired configuration state for the controls by deploying policies in enforce mode, you can also do the same thing using automation that you're defined with a policy in inform mode. And that allows you to also ensure that you're complying to the enterprise IT processes. Let me just quickly highlight one more thing and before I turn it back to Aradhana. So one of the things you see here is the advanced managed cluster security, as well as the advanced cluster security operator. These are the components of the advanced cluster security, which is the StackRox acquisition. So you can see that we can actually use ACM to actually deploy the StackRox settle component, as well as the StackRox individual agents on the StackRox clusters. And you can see that the cluster names here are exactly the same names that ACM knows about, because ACM is basically determining the inventory, and then it is ensuring that StackRox is in place on those clusters. And so as I mentioned earlier, the OpenShift bundle, OpenShift Plus bundle includes ACM, ACS, it also includes Quay. And you can see here, we also have integration with Quay from ACM, where we can use this policy, the image manifest vulnerability policy, to detect vulnerabilities from Quay. So that's kind of a little demo. And then let me conclude by showing you our GitHub. So this is the policy collection repo where we have policies both in the stable and community folders. And we also have a lot of blogs that you can go and read about. Back to you, Aradhana. Can you hear me?
And Aradhana seems to have dropped. So if you could go back to the slides, Jaya, and sorry about that. We've had some little technical snafus, and
Okay.
you may have to talk through the slides for her. I'm not sure whether she ran out of time, because I know she's a very, very busy person.
Okay, no problem. I needed a drink. So yeah, I can definitely talk to this. So the rest of the presentation, we were planning to focus on the work that we are doing in the Kubernetes policy work group that both Aradhana and I are part of, as well as a few others. So in this work group, we are focused on two efforts in recent times. One is this policy report custom resource definition. So this is a standard that we have defined for returning policy violations. And this is supported by multiple enforcement points, such as the Falco operator, the Qveno policy engine, etc. So this allows, from a management point of view, a standard way to be able to collate the results and then integrate with enterprise tools. The second piece of work that we are focused on is the Kubernetes policy management white paper. And so we had published it out there for review, received a bunch of comments, if I've incorporated all those comments, and now we are ready to commit the paper. So you can actually see it here. This is the policy management white paper. So that is another really good effort from this work group. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is that we have a policy management panel coming up tomorrow in this conference, in the KubeCon conference, that Aradhana and I will be part of, as well as Jim and Robert as well. Please join us there so we can continue the discussion in terms of the what, why, and how of policy management for Kubernetes. Dan, I don't know how much time I have at this point.
So at this point, we have hit the end of your half an hour, considering all of our wonderful snafus.
Okay.
And technical things. So we're going to ask our next speaker to join us, who's John Fortin. And so thank you, Jaya, and please thank Adrana for taking the time today as well.
Okay.
If you can stay around and hop in for a few minutes, Jaya, there may be some questions there, and just maybe add the links in Hopin to your events that are happening for the rest of the week of KubeCon. So if people want to join there and come to those, that would be great.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you very much for the opportunity here. Thank you.
All right, folks. So let's get John Fortin in, because John is one of my favorite people, because he is also, not only is he an OpenShift Commons member, he is a working group member, and he's been with the OKD working group for quite a long time. He comes from Market America, shop.com. So if you've been doing any shopping lately, that would be some of the work that John Fortin is doing, and they've been using OKD for quite some time. So he's going to, if you give us a minute, we're going to get him on. And Jaya, thank you very much. You can leave the stage, and we'll see if we can. And here comes John. All right, right on time. And let's see if this all works. And here he comes. Hello,
right.
John.
Hello,
Well,
can you hear me?
I can definitely hear you, and I think everybody else can too. So I've just been talking your praises up for an active member in the OKD working group, and that's one of my favorite things. I love the open source side of OpenShift, and John's group has been doing some amazing things with OKD and is moving to use OKD in production. So I'm going to let John share his screen. If you see the little icon.
There. And window, and there we go. All right, can you see it? And let me go into.
And there you go. And I love PowerPoint. Not. Or is that Keynote? There you go. All right. John, introduce yourself. Tell everybody how amazing OKD is and how you're leveraging it. And we'll have some Q&A at the end. So take it away, John.
All right. Thank you very much. Hey, my name is John Fortin. I'm a senior systems architect with Market America, shop.com. We've been using OKD for quite a while, but let me talk a little bit about what Market America and shop.com is. So Market America, we do multiple things. We have different brands. We have isotonics, motives. We have many different ways of bringing people in. We do jewelry, all sorts of stuff. Shop.com, well, and in Market America, we're out in 8 countries, 5 different languages, localizations for every country and language that we where we have businesses. With shop.com, we have approximately 87 million products worldwide, thousands of views, millions of views per day, personalization, all sorts of things that are back end that make shop.com a very individualized service for people to come into. What to know about Market America? We were founded in 1982 by J.R. and Lauren Rittinger, based in Greensboro, North Carolina. Last year, we had about $850 million plus revenue worldwide, 8 market countries, US, Canada, United Kingdom, Australia, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore, Malaysia. We have about 850 employees worldwide and over 300 IT employees. For technology stack at Market America, we have a mixture of commercial and open source, ranging from Red Hat Enterprise, Microsoft Windows vSphere, which we do all our virtualization on, Rocket Universe Database, SQL Server, Adobe Cold Fusion, and a lot of the open source stuff that everybody's heard of, CentOS 7, Java, Python. We have a real-time metrics and reporting stack. using Devolti, NiFi, Druid, Superset, real-time monitoring with Prometheus and Grafana. We use Kafka as our message broker in pub subservice. And of course, OKD 3.1 and 4, which is the community's supported version of OpenShift container platform. So our microservice journey began back in about Q4 of 2016. We're starting to look at breaking apart some of our monolithic applications and trying to get into more of a way to more quickly move applications and services out for our applications and users. We're looking at containers versus standalone apps, and containers, had a lot of advantages for us. Easy to build, depending on the complexity of the services. Stored in container repositories like Docker Hub and Artifactory. Easy to deploy individual containers, both for development and potentially for testing and staging and production. And we looked at multiple different container technologies. Standalone Docker, which we found great for individual building and testing on somebody's laptop or on individual servers. We looked at Docker Swarm, which honestly never really took off back in 2016, 2017. And we looked at Kubernetes, which, obviously, looking back to 2016 from now is obviously the clear winner for the orchestration stack. Very command line oriented, which, if you're familiar with Kubernetes, everybody here is probably pretty familiar. And there can be a fairly high learning curve, all that YAML that everybody loves. So we really, we're like, yeah, we like Kubernetes, but how can we go, move forward and make it a little bit user friendly? Again, Kubernetes is great, declarative configuration, tell us what you want, and it just does it. Namespaces, but not everybody loves the command line and all that YAML. So back in that time, we started to look at OpenShift Origin. OpenShift had done a big pivot back from version 2 to version 3 and really went into the containerization, Docker containerization framework. And we're like, is that going to give us what we want? So we looked at it. I played with it for a good little bit, learned how to install it, had some people internally test with it, and we're like, we like this. Nice web-based GUI for many activities, made very user-friendly for our developers. They're able to, if they want to, deploy an application, almost point and click. Choose a template, put in a couple of configuration elements, and you're off. We like the enhanced security with role-based authentication and cluster and project-based security context. Those were all winners for us. We did like the additional capabilities built on top of Kubernetes. The build configurations, so we were able to easily build our applications, deployment configurations, templates, deploying a new version of an application just by pointing at a Git repo and pressing a button. That was very advantageous to us. We also like to the fact that we're able to build applications using a containerized process. In this case, almost always S2I or source 2 image containers. Available for many languages, Java, Python, pretty much whatever you wanted. And we were able to take advantage of that. You're also able to build your own repeatable process if the containers that were out there didn't quite meet what you need. You're easy to modify. And we were able to integrate OKD into many CI/CD tools such as Jenkins, which we use internally via the REST APIs or CLIs. And if you're a command line person, command line tools were also available. OC, which is the equivalent of kubectl. So that was Q1 of 2017. We were pretty happy with OpenShift. It seemed to fit all the things that we wanted in a containerized platform. So now we had to figure out, how are we going to actually use OKD? How do we move our processes? How do we move our applications? How do we move our services? How do we build our services? What do we have to do in order to make this work? And it was a very iterative process. We had to change how we thought in terms of building from Docker files, or from an application build to a build from source process. We had to look at our source repo design, and so we could be consistent between different applications, so our build process would be consistent. One of the harder things we had to do was remove hard-coded environment information from our repositories. There'd be environment variables, one for dev, one for test, one for production. And then when things would get built, they'd just say, okay, build test, build dev, build prod. Well, we didn't want to do that anymore. We wanted to make sure that we had one image that was going to be across the board, one image to rule them all, so to speak. No environment specific images. Everything in those images was to be configured by environment variables, or config maps, or some other thing that we're passing to the image. The other thing was, how do we deploy our OKD services? And again, we only want to build in dev, no building in any other environments. Any non-dev environment, pull from images that we put into our repository that were built from dev. And again, environment configuration is provided via environment variables and a deployment config, or a deployment config maps, which are preferred because they can be shared amongst different applications. And like I said, this was a very iterative process. We started with a very simple config map and a template, and say, okay, can we deploy an application? All right, how do we have to modify? Do we need to put in various variables? Are there defaults that we have to use or that we can use to make it simpler? So that took a little while, getting the application teams used to them. How do we do an ingress? How do we actually access these servers, these services? So yeah, that took a little while. So once we did that, once we figured out how to do our builds, how do we deploy, we're like, okay, let's start moving things through our process. So we built a few clusters. We have a dev and testing cluster currently running on OKD 3.11, although we do have a 4.7 cluster that we are migrating to. 3 masters and 3 compute nodes. That will probably grow, especially when we move to OKD 4 and we start adding some of the features that we want to add for OKD 4. We do have a production cluster in a separate data center, sized pretty much the same. Again, currently on OKD 3.11, and we are working on moving to OKD 4 after we move to dev and test. And we also have a QA environment where we run our Selenium grid testing cluster. This is where we do all of our integration and regression testing. We have a whole team that writes scripts to try to go through and test every conceivable piece of our application stack. Black box testing, white box testing. Can we make it fail? Does it still work after we do a deployment? All that kind of stuff that we expect QA to do. And that's actually our first cluster to use OKD 4 on OKD 4.7. Each team has their own development and staging or test integration project. Deployments in non-dev are migrated to staging and production via Jenkins, via our deployment team. Application teams do not deploy outside of dev. We have a set of application templates that allow us to have consistent creation of applications. Again, it's almost point and click. Click on the template, put in your Git repository and a couple other environment variables, and within a couple of minutes, your application is ready to go and test. click on the link or click on the URL that we create, point to it from wherever you're pointing to, and go off and test. And this allows us to be very, very quick in our development cycle. If we need to make a change, we update Git, commit it, and then click the button again, say redeploy, and it goes out, rebuilds it, redeploys it to dev, and lets us test. Once dev is done, deployment team says, okay, we're going to deploy it to staging. They do the testing, and then it gets deployed to production. Those are still manual processes. We do not have a complete end-to-end deployment process from dev all the way to production. We do see us getting to there eventually, but we are not there yet. Applications are front-ended by a NetScaler load balancer via node ports. This is something that's going to change once we get to OKD version 4. We're going to be bringing in Istio Mesh, which is allow us to do all of the things that we're doing on the NetScaler to be able to do it natively inside of the cluster and not have to do the setup in the NetScaler. We're kind of excited about that. We're actually hoping to see a performance gain, along with a whole lot of additional metrics that we currently cannot capture. So Q4 2021, where are we now? So we have deployed over 200 services in dev. We are probably adding 1 or 2 services a week, if not more. Although this time of year we're kind of in a freeze. Primary languages are Java, Python, and Node.js. We have a very active deployment and development teams on all 3 of those. We have over 170 services deployed in our staging test environment and over 170 services deployed in our production environment. As I mentioned before, we are in the active process of migrating to OKD 4, in particular 4.7. QA has already migrated. That was in second quarter of 2021. Due to several architectural changes, the services that we are migrating are taking a little bit longer. Naming convention migrations, deprecation of the NetScaler to the ingress. That configuration is a little bit more complex, so it's taking us a little bit more time to get that nailed down. And we also ran into the Jenkins OpenShift plugin deprecation between OKD 3.x and OKD 4. So it broke some of our automation, and we're still going through that in order to fix that and get our automation processes running as we expect them to run. So that's kind of the basis of what we're doing with OKD at marketamericashop.com. We are using it in production. It's been very, very successful for us. We've had very few issues, and the automation and capabilities that it's given us have far exceeded our expectations. But there are some caveats that you need to really know about using OKD in production. The most important one in my mind is the fact that there is no official support. You cannot call Red Hat and say, I'm having a problem with OKD and I need some help. If you need that level of support, you really need to have the enterprise level of OpenShift, Open Container Platform. There's no one to call at 2 a.m. Community resources such as Slack and GitHub are available and are very, very active, but there's no guarantee that you're going to find a solution in those. And there's also, community members provide assistance, at their convenience and with the amount of time that they have. We're all busy. Sometimes you have time to look at an issue. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes an issue may look interesting and you want to dig into it. And sometimes you're like, well, I don't have time for that right now. So the community people are great and they're great resources, but you really have to be able to to an extent, support yourself. You need to be able to become proficient at using the logging tools within OKD. If you're doing an install, you need to be able to use OpenShift install gather. If you're having cluster install problems, you must be able to use OCADM must gather in order to get logs if you have a cluster issue after install. If you open something in Git, or if you open something on Slack and you don't provide that, you're probably going to get a gentle reminder that, yeah, you probably need to provide the logs, unless it's something, pretty simple, for a solution. You got to get used to using Red Hat Bugzilla. If there's a significant issue within OKD, it's probably something that is going to affect OCP also. And if you open a Bugzilla, you're much likely to get some action from a Red Hatter. Because if it's a bug in OCP and in OKD, much better chance of it getting fixed, relatively quickly. Self-help is a must. Google's your friend. Looking at the documentation, looking at other issues. Is there something similar to what I'm doing? Is there something that other people have had? If you're good in IT, use your debugging abilities to try to figure this out. It'll make you better. It'll make you more helpful to the community also. And you got to test. If you are planning on using OKD in production, you've got to test. You've got to test upgrades. You've got to test installs. You've got to test pretty much everything, and not on your active clusters. You've got to have a sandbox. You've got to have something where you can install the current version or whatever you're using in production or test or whatever you're going to be upgrading. You've got to be able to install it. You've got to be able to run through that process and see if you run into any issues. There's nothing worse than trying to upgrade your cluster and then finding out that it's stuck, and it's something that you could have caught if you would have tested in a test environment or a POC environment. Another thing to understand is that OKD and OpenShift container platform run on different operating systems. They're similar, but they're still different. OCP runs on Red Hat Core OS, which is based on Red Hat Enterprise Linux, very well supported and well maintained Enterprise Linux distribution. OKD runs on Fedora Core OS, which is based on Fedora OS, another well maintained operating system. People love Fedora. The issue, though, is that Fedora and Fedora Core OS have a very fast pace of development. It changes very, very quickly from week to week, bi-weekly, whatever. And OKD can be very, very sensitive to changes in the underlying Fedora Core OS, and sometimes with unintended instability. We've had it happen, multiple times, since really we went stable in April, I think it was. Usually the fixes are relatively quick, but you got to be aware. And as I said before, you got to test. Don't assume that your upgrades are going to go smoothly. You got to test an environment first, just to make sure. Not all features in OpenShift container platform are available in OKD. Many operators are not yet available in OKD, and there are features in OCP that require Red Hat subscriptions, and thus will not be available in OKD. There may be equivalents that are upstream, but may require some research on your part or discussion within the community. Once a new stable version of OKD is released, that previous version, there are no longer stable releases created. So we just went live with 4.8 not too long ago. So there will not be any 4.7 stable releases. There will still be nightlies and stuff, which may have additional features and stuff, but no more stable releases for the 4.7 branch. When 4.9 becomes available, 4.8 will end stable releases. You'll have a last stable release, and then that will be it. Downside with nightly releases or nightly snapshots is that they're only available for about 72 hours. So you have to, either you can copy them off somewhere if you need to use them, but realize that those are very, very quickly updated and removed. As I mentioned before, having a sandbox environment is vital. You've got to be able to test installs. You've got to be able to test upgrades. You've got to be able to test if you're putting in some type of new operator, which could have impact on the rest of your cluster. For instance, Istio Mesh. Istio Mesh is very, I'll say, intrusive, into the networking of OKD. You may not want to install it initially in your production environment. You want to make sure you have some place where you can test it safely, be able to uninstall it, reinstall it, reconfigure it, break it, and be able to recover without affecting, the rest of your clusters. You also need to know how to recover from failure. Unfortunately, things do happen. You need to be able to understand how to back up your etcd databases. You need to understand how to recover a master in case you lose one. Kind of the basic things that you would do with any application. You need to know how are you going to recover from it if something goes down and breaks. Those processes have to be tested, and they have to be tested again and tested again, in some way that you would, do your normal DR. That's an important process within, of your OKD environment. The other thing I'd say is become engaged, in the OKD community, hopefully prior to an issue. It always helps if somebody already knows your name and knows, what you've been going through and stuff. They may be more inclined to reach out and say, okay, I see you're having a problem. Maybe you can try this or do that. Sometimes if you're, doing a cold problem and nobody knows who you are, it might be, well, let's see what happens and maybe somebody will help. Become a tester. Learn how to test nightly and stable releases as you can. It helps you. It helps other people. Helps identify issues that may be in your environment that nobody else is seeing. So it may be a bug that it's a bug, but nobody else is doing it because everybody else is installing on vSphere, and you're installing on some bare metal or something. It's happened, but we're always looking for new testers. Testing is great. Keep an eye on the Git repo discussions and issues. Look at those. See what is being identified. Are there issues that you can help solve? Are there issues that you're interested in? You go look at the source code. It's like, oh, how does this work? How do I build this? How do I build a piece and component of OpenShift because I think there's a bug? Can I come up with a patch and test it and build it and say, oh, look, okay, I'm able to fix this. Join the Slack channels. You can learn a whole lot just by watching the discussions that are happening in the Slack channels. You don't even have to be involved. Join the working group. Working group is what is basically trying to keep OKD going. What is our focus going forward? How are we going to get there? How can we get more people involved? Diane does a great job, with keeping the working group going. We'd love to have more people. The more people, the merrier. So feel free to reach out and join the working group. And that's pretty much what Market America is doing with OKD. Our journey, like I said, started in Q4 of 2016, and our journey is continuing Q4 of 2021. We are looking forward to migrating everything to OKD 4.8. We're looking forward to all the enhanced capabilities that we're getting from OKD 4, all the way from metrics to scalability to automation, ease of use. The difference between 3 and 4 is amazing. The difference between 4.7 and 4.8, and 4.9. There's so many features coming down the road that I'm really excited about it. I can't wait. I hope that we get more people that are involved and more people that are excited about OKD going forward. That was probably pretty short and pretty quick, and I probably talked too fast. But thank you very much, and I'll be happy to take any questions as we go forward.
All right. Well, as I always say, at every OpenShift Commons gathering, I have to have at least one OKD talk. And John, thank you for stepping up and making this happen. As I mentioned earlier, we are having an office hours tomorrow at, I think, 2 p.m. Let me just share my screen here for a second and see what I can take it away from him. Nah, I can't take it away from you. You have to unshare, John, and I'll share the.
Yep, I'm looking. Yep.
That's okay.
There we go.
There we go. Now I can share. And let me see if it'll let me do this without hanging everybody while we wait for our next speaker to come in. Should be, yeah. Tomorrow it's going to be in at 2 p.m. So a little bit later than right now, or right now, tomorrow in the virtual booth inside of KubeCon. So, and we will definitely be having people from the Fedora CoreOS side of things. We have someone, Christian Glombeck, who's one of the co-chairs, has been working very diligently on getting OKD working with ARM. Charo Groover has been working on getting the code-ready containers working for OKD. And there's hopefully John will be able to join us as well for more Q&A then. But it is a really wonderfully engaging community of folks who are working on this. And as John said, we are always looking for your contributions. That our documentation, it's not perfect, can use lots of help. And we are definitely, if you have a cloud platform and some resources and time and want to do some testing of OKD, we do have a very frequent release cycle. So testing and creating the CI/CD pipelines for building OKD is one of the chores that's on our table right now for OKD. So if you, for John, you could ask them in the chat and we will join there. I can see our next speaker is coming right up in the here. I'm going to add Stephen Boyd in. And I'm going to thank John for his time. And I know you probably were on the OKD working group meeting this morning that I missed. So I will be watching the recording of that. The OKD
Me too.
Sessions are all recorded on the YouTube channel. So if you find the OpenShift YouTube channel, you will find all the OKD working group meetings from time immemorial and all of my bad haircuts over the years. So please thank John very much for joining us, and we will check you all out in the chat. And I can see Stephen Boyd. And Stephen, wave if you can hear me. Yes. Now, Stephen, say hello to the audience and share your slides. And I'll stop.
Right. Hello, everyone. I believe I'm bringing my slideshow up now.
Hi.
So we can.
You are, but I'm not seeing your slides yet. So let's wait until we do that. So on the bottom, there is a little click through there. And I am going to stop sharing mine. That might do it. Now try sharing. I think I stole the show from you there for a minute to broadcast that OKD office hour.
All right.
It happens. Yes, it happens.
We need some technology people here. That's what we need.
All right. So at the bottom of the screen, there's a little thing that looks like a monitor, and that you have to click on that and share your slides there. And I think Ben, who's helping you out, knows the tricks of the rope for that.
He's on it.
He's on it. Cool. And now we've just lost Stephen's camera pen. And I have this easy button, everybody. And I really want to be able to click this for one of the sessions. But it's not happening so far. But thank you all for paying attention and having patience with our processes. And I really wish that we were all together live and in person on stage. But soon after this session, we have the AMA, which is the Ask Me Anything. And so I'm going to make all the Red Hatters who have spoken and others who are in the room join us on stage. Where was the easy button when we had the audio issues? I don't know.
That was easy.
And we just lost John, Stephen. So I'm going to make him reuse that. There we go. I'm going to let him back in. And there we go. I can see you, Stephen.
Never a dull moment.
I still can't see your slides. So
We're getting ready to share those now.
awesome. I've had the easy button ready and my Monster drink all day long. And for those of you who are watching at home along with me, thanks for your patience. And make sure to stay on after the AMA for the lightning talks and some of our swag and raffles. So please be sure to do that. There'll be some awesome. Oh, we're getting double Diane. Great, is what I'm told. How did we manage that? So I'll give it a few minutes. And then Stephen, maybe if all else fails, Ben can send me your slides and I can advance them for you.
Sure, that works as well.
If that's what it takes, that's what we'll do.
You should have a copy of them. I sent them to you, so you can.
I think so, and I'm just going to see if I can find them. And hang on while I do that.
But we did share them, so.
I know you did. So, but everybody's been tweaking their slides up until the very last minute.
Oh no, I haven't touched them. They're just as
you're-
they were.
You are the only person who hasn't done that. So while we're doing this, why don't you tell folks a little bit about
Absolutely.
what you do, and we will find those slides for you.
That'll work. Slides are boring anyway. I'm Stephen Boyd. I work for the Electrical Training Alliance. This is a very small not-for-profit organization working with the National Electrical Contractors Association and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. That's a mouthful. However, what we do is we create the curriculum used by all of the apprentices going through an electrical apprenticeship program. Some 15 years ago, we were still publishing books and working through selling those books. And then the World Wide Web, crashed into the scene, and everybody started to say, hey, let's do these things online. So we became somewhat of a software company, embracing such technologies as Moodle for our learning management system and several other homegrown applications to support test generation in a proctored manner. We have learning record stores, all of these things that educational institutions have to deal with as they work through their processes. As you can imagine, working with those, you're dependent on other technologies. Moodle, for instance, you can only do so much before you're constrained with their technology. Although we've greatly modified that, I lovingly call it our Franken Moodle. We still use it, and we're still dependent on those technologies. Recently, with the demand for workers, we were given an opportunity to create our program online so that apprentices could actually get to their curriculum throughout the country. Some 40,000 people average a year applying for apprenticeship, and take their actual first year apprenticeship program through a process that we're developing. Part of the grant required us to create tracking software. Some knowledge there. The slides do go into a little bit of this, but I'll just talk through it. If you can imagine, managing a training center, and there are 250 of those across the country, each with, multiple apprentices, anywhere from 15 apprentices to several thousand in some of our larger programs. You have to deal with how many hours have they had training, what curriculum are they taking, what are their online classes, and so forth. All that has to be tracked. So the software that we've developed or wanted to develop would replace some of that, replacing it because we have systems out there that all use, some of them spreadsheets. Diane laughed at one point because I told her we have an application out there that uses Fox Pro for some of you senior developers out there. We can definitely work with those. But the problem came that all of our users ended up having to double entry their data, or sometimes triple entry their data, because they would maintain the apprentices in their local software, and then they would go to our learning management system and they would have to enter their users again, and they would get grades and they'd have to export that and go to their systems. So we wanted to create a system that allowed for more natural transitions and once and done technology, if you will. And we took this opportunity. I had been playing with OKD for some time, looking at replacing our LMSs or working within our LMSs, enhancing them in some way. And this became the prime opportunity for us. So we were able to create a system that enhances those. We have several monolithic applications, and their development times are very slow. We take several weeks to several months to even deploy features. We are moving in an agile way, but all of that technology is just slow going with the testing and everything else. So wanting to enhance that process, we made some selections. As I got into it, we work with outside development partners, and I had done all the business analysis work to get this up and running, and handed it over to our seniors, our basically our project management office, and then COVID hit. And they said that we're halting all external development, but since you're a developer as well, why don't you just go ahead and continue developing this? Which was a little bit more than I was planning on taking on at the time. So I did engage Red Hat, and I got a contract with Red Hat to help me get things set up where we chose the right tools. In our case, we ended up using OpenShift Dedicated, which is a supported managed service for your OpenShift container platform. They're somewhat lagging OCP.
Stephen, just for a second, I think you have control of your slides now. So try advancing with that clicker you have in your hand.
Absolutely. All right, so we've gone through most of this. We provide the curricular trend, labor grant, tracking, reporting. So there we go. This is the big guy.
They're still not showing, so I'm not sure. Maybe there we go. Now I can see it. Cool.
Okay.
It's a go.
So this is kind of what we worked with, and we've got quite a bit going on. We chose a microservices approach. We decided to use Quarkus for most of our stuff. We're a lot of Java on our back end. We do have some Node.js, some various other items, but as you know, our Moodle would be PHP. None of that is living here. These are just augmenting services, and they work in concert with all of our other systems. But we did go ahead and choose to use Quarkus. It's very fast. We have a lot of services that don't need to be running all the time. So we don't want to take up space or resources when they're not needed. And Quarkus allows for pretty much instant on, do its function, and then spins down. So it's very, very lightweight. We are using Atlassian Bitbucket for our repo, simply because we also use Jira and Confluence for our documentation and support. We did want to use CI/CD at the time, since we were doing complete greenfield. I tasked Red Hat. I mean, since you're paying Red Hat anyways, let's go ahead and get some good stuff in there. So we pulled in Red Hat Pipelines, which uses Tecton. It is a Knative CI/CD pipeline. Allows us to go ahead and do all of our services. It is capable of doing everything. However, we wanted to take a look at Argo CD as well, because I personally have a love-hate relationship with YAML. Diane says she loves YAML. We like that. However, I like version control in all things, and Argo CD gives us ability to have our deployment YAMLs version controlled and synchronizing our deployments across our fields. So what do we have? We have 2 clusters, both OpenShift dedicated. The weirdest thing for us was that our non-production cluster is about 3 times the size as our production cluster. The reason being is all of your stuff runs in your non-prod cluster, your pipelines and your image streams and all of the content that you're doing, including your testing, your image building and all that. So we actually need more resources for our non-production cluster than we do for our production cluster. However, our pipeline takes it at any time we commit to our Bitbucket, we automatically start a build. And we have 3 namespaces inside our non-prod cluster. We have a development branch, a test, and a UAT. Development just is where it gets built. It's where everything gets done right when we kick off with the Bitbucket, and it allows me to make sure that my services are seeing each other. Once they're talking and I can just look at things and make sure everything's working, I can promote those and tag those so that they end up in test. Once they're in test, we actually build our end-to-end tests, and we use JMeter for that. We do spot testing with Postman, but for the most part, we can script JMeter into our pipeline, so we can build that. So we do build out our JMeter tests inside the test environment, and all of those are private. There's no routing to those. Those are all just console in, and you deal with what you want to do. You can port forward to do some testing. Once we promote those and we feel like they're stable internally, and we want our external partners who work with our learning management system, learning record store, to actually access them, we promote it once more to the UAT environment, and I kick off and let them know. While it's in UAT, they have access to it. While it's not on this diagram, we're using Red Hat Open API Management. So it's another managed service that basically gives you an on-premise 3-scale deployment. So all of our APIs are backed using 3-scale. So that is how they would access those. Part of our problem was we want everything to be destroyable. That's the whole beauty of the OpenShift world, is that, you want it to be long living, scalable, resilient, and recoverable quickly. So while SMEs at Red Hat are maintaining the cluster, we wanted to make sure that if there was a catastrophic event and a cluster goes down, we could rebuild everything. Well, how do you do that quickly with databases? And as we were working with Red Hat, we found that all of our databases would be better served if they were off of the cluster. There are lots of options for those, including, Amazon buckets and everything else. But we worked with a group called Cockroach Cloud, Cockroach Labs, to create for us some cloud-produced Postgres-compatible databases. And they have multiple ways to consume, so it worked for us. If you see our development environment and our test environment, we're using a developer a cloud account, which is free for the most part. You get a very small, there's no guarantee, there's no uptime, but it lets me do my testing and it deploys it to cloud just like my production is. It uses the same technology. When we get to UAT, we need a little bit more longevity for our data, so we're using their in-service operator to maintain a couple of nodes inside that we use for backups and everything else, just for UAT, so that the developers can have some long-lasting data. When we do move to production in our production cluster, we are paying for one region right now, 3-node cluster of Cockroach Cloud, which again is a Postgres compatible database. But what it allows us to do is make sure that we could rebuild our cluster within, I say hours. It takes a couple hours to spin up an OSV cluster, but once those clusters are available, we can redeploy everything because nothing lives within the cluster as far as our images go. So all of that works because we're using these technologies. Our CI/CD builds the image on our OpenShift cluster, pushes it to Quay. Why Quay instead of Docker, Hub, or some other system? Again, we went Red Hat. We were working with Red Hat. But Red Hat gives you the ability using Quay to give you security testing. So immediately once an image gets pushed to Quay, it starts scanning it for vulnerabilities, all of the vulnerabilities that all of your Red Hat stack are covering. So you can always be sure that your stack is secure. So benefits. I'm just trying to keep an eye on time since we had some technical difficulties. So we had a couple of things. Because we have multiple users using the technology, we have external users using this technology, we did not get rid of our monolithic applications. So we needed to measure impact across the board. So our existing process for an applicant coming in is that they apply in person. They can go to a training center and they apply. And there's about 50,000 of those a year. I was a little off on my memory. 50,000 of those a year. And they would go into their local training centers and apply. They would have to go to another training center and apply if they wanted to go to 2 regionally close training centers. For us, Baltimore and DC are very close, and you could walk into both of them and apply. After a rollout of this system, they can now apply to multiple programs anywhere in the country by filling out one application. We lost controls of our slides. There we go. Entering job training, training reports. So as an apprentice goes through their on-the-job training, they have to fill out evaluations. Those evaluations then go to their journey level worker, who also fills out an evaluation, and they get submitted to the offices. So all of these offices are very small staff. They only have anywhere from 1 sometimes up to 15 people. But you can imagine with 36,000 apprentices a week entering those reports across 250 training centers, that's a lot of data entry. So after rollout, all of that's handled via a mobile app. They actually fill out their evaluations. It gets kicked over to the journey level worker. They do their comments, and when it's submitted, it's already in the system. Finally, advancement operations. As you go through the process, 5-year program for inside, 3-year program for outside, residential, and telecommunications, you have to look at, have they met all the qualifications for education? Have they met all the qualifications for on-the-job training? Have they done any certifications, whether it's regional? So you can imagine that same 36,000 a week, you'd have to go collect all of this data and then figure out who's eligible for advancement throughout the program. With the new system, all of that's done for you. It automatically takes a look at what you've set up as your guidelines and parameters, and all of those microservices go through the process. So DevOps metrics, a little bit more applicable to what we're talking about here. So again, we did not replace any of our monolithic applications. We are supporting those with some microservices. So our current process for our non-microservice based deployments, a bug takes us on average 1 to 2 weeks, whereas with the microservices, we're rolling out fixes 1 to 8 hours. New features can take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks for our learning management systems, our learning record stores, test generators, and other tools, whereas a new feature with the microservices anywhere from 2 to 4 days, and that's high. In most cases, we can have something out in a day. It's just rapid, and we do go with that model. You know, we roll out our skateboards and our bicycles and our Harley Davidsons into a Ford Raptor. You know, we go through the process and we get these out there, but it does allow for rapid cycles. Epics, huge epics, take anywhere from 2 to 8 months with our current monolithic applications, and we can roll out new epics in 1 to 4 weeks with our current system. So in terms of OpenShift, whether it's OKD, OpenShift Container Platform, or in our case, a managed service with OpenShift Dedicated, it allows us to rapidly deploy services to augment, support, or even fully support new technology. You can deploy front-end sites, middleware, or back-end sites, all of those being supported securely. In our case, we're using 3Scale through a Red Hat Open API managed service. We have 2 clusters, a non-prod and a prod cluster. We're using Tecton pipelines to get those deployments out. So every new service gets a new pipeline and it pushes right through the process. Argo CD keeps all of our environments in sync, and Quay keeps our containers secure. And that is all I had, unless there are questions.
I think that was an awesome way of doing that. And thank you for segueing with the slide snafus and all of that. Looking to see if there's any questions from the audience in person. and that apparently the folks virtually are not figuring out how to use the QA that well, or they are surprisingly silent. I am always thrilled when we get to see the architectural diagrams like you've shown, and really get them the deep dive in on what people are actually doing. A great big shout out to Cockroach Labs and the work that you're doing. Someone's just asked, why do you like Argo more than Tekton?
It's not alike the technology. We actually started with Tekton and use it quite a bit. Once we kind of stabilize on a service, we're using Argo only for the YAML management, deployments, maintaining version control, because it does use customize IO built in right into the container. It's more of a preference. You can use either one for your deployments. We chose Argo CD because I had a steep learning curve with YAML documents.
And you know, you guys make fun of YAML, but
I told you she would plug it.
YAML is the duct tape of the universe these days. We used to say Perl
Very
was
true.
the duct tape, and I'm showing my white hairs in my hair, in my hair these days. But YAML, you know, I don't know where we'd be without YAML these days. So and
I concede that doesn't make it fun.
it doesn't make it fun, and boy, I hate the white space issues with YAML. So it's quite a fun learning curve. I actually know one of my friends and colleagues from another startup I was in, Ingy.net, Brian Ingerson, who is the author of YAML. So shout out to Brian and his cohorts. You could probably find them on Wikipedia somewhere, or in a coffee shop in Seattle. So we probably owe them a lot more debts of gratitude and free coffees for all of the work that they did, and the pains in our lives that it has become.
There is one other major significant advantage to using Argo CD in your production environment, if nothing else, and that is the ability to lock it at a specific level. So while Tekton is great for doing your CI/CD and getting those out there, with Customize, it's always monitoring. With your Argo CD, it's always monitoring your versions. So if someone with the authority either accidentally or maliciously, does a deployment that you're not ready for, Customize will see that change. Argo CD will kick in and bring you back to the approved version automatically. So there are some advantages to using Argo CD. It's a flavor, it's a preference, really. I like Tekton. It's very clear. When you start getting up there in the services, though, when you think about having a pipeline for your deployment, a pipeline for your patching, and then a pipeline for your building, you've got 3, maybe 4 pipelines just for every service. And if they're all in the same namespace, that's quite a long list of pipelines to manage. So again, personal preference, they both do wonderfully, and I've had no problems with either.
All right, and there's one more question coming in, and I think we have time, depending on how long you pontificate. What criteria did you use to pick a storage provider, and what was the biggest challenge you had with storage?
Right, we looked at multiple options there. We actually played with Crunchy for internally. We went just plain vanilla Postgres with containers, and ultimately what it boiled down to for me was, again, very small not-for-profit organization. It's me and one other guy working internally with our external developers. So going with a managed service provider made sense for us. But the operator works great as well. So even internally, I would say find out what your uptimes are, your survivability. With the national company that we have in terms of supporting 240 programs countrywide, at some point as the popularity spins up, we are also going to need to have regional data. And Cockroach does provide a very native cloud-ready system for going natively across multiple regions. Right now we're single region, 3-node cluster, but Cockroach Labs assures me that whenever the time comes, they'll be right there to make sure that I can spin up another node in another region, another 3-node cluster region, and my data will be seamless. So those were the criteria we chose in terms of picking what support worked for us.
Awesome. Well, it's great to hear from you guys. We wish you all the success in scaling up, and love the two-man crew doing all of this in the back end. That's really spectacular. And as you scale and grow, we'll be there with you. So thanks for joining us today virtually. Where are you sitting now? Where in the world are you, Stephen?
We are in Bowie, Maryland, which is just outside of Washington, D.C.
There you go. Cool. Well, we've got folks coming on in a little bit during the lightning talks from Kuala Lumpur. So hopefully they'll be awake and ready for us and caffeinated. So we're going to leave you all now virtually from this stage and take you back to the in-person stage and hand you off for the AMA session with Stu Miniman. And then after that, we've got a whole series of lightning talks that we will continue to broadcast through Hopin, we'll see if we can't make our partners dance really fast this afternoon. So we love how Stephen danced through that first little bit of
after
slides.
that, we've got a whole series of lightning talks that we will continue to broadcast through Hopin.
And I'm going to let you all go.
We'll see if we can't make our partners dance really fast this afternoon. So we love how Stephen danced through that first.
So I'm just muting the hop-in so that we don't have feedback like we had before, and just waiting for the okay from the folks in the back. Give us a second here. Tim, Natalie? All right. Well, hey, thank you. As we said, we appreciate you working with us through the bumps of the hybrid event that we've had today. Thought it was really awesome that we got to see some presentations. Some of the many users that couldn't or wouldn't or geographically, couldn't come here in person. And as Diane said, we have the Ask the Expert panel here. Happy to have 11 of us from Red Hat to be able to answer questions. Before we start that, just want a big thank you to Diane and the whole team that helped put this together. And we're going to have, as Diane mentioned, also, we've got some of the lightning panels after. There's still more swag. There's actually a raffle, so hope you will stay for all of that. But do want to open it up first to the audience here. As we said, we've got, if there's any of the sessions that you ruminated on a little bit and want to ask some follow-up questions, we've got data science specialists, security specialists, areas from all over the communities. So please, if there's questions, let's start there. Don't be shy. So Clayton, maybe we're going to come to you because you have no shortage of conversation typically. So just quick introduction. Hopefully most of the people in the room saw your presentation, the KCP stuff earlier. Just what you're working on these days, and yeah.
Sure. So Clayton Coleman. I used to be the OpenShift architect, and now there are a plethora of leads and architects, and I've kind of stepped up a little bit to look at problems across the whole ecosystem. And OpenShift is built on Linux. It's built on top of OpenStack and virtualization and public clouds and private clouds. So I spend a lot of my time kind of in that space that Stu mentioned of trying to think about how we can do more to support the pieces coming together. And so KCP and some of the stuff I talked about earlier today is an attempt, at least, to look at patterns that we all are hitting. And actually, the real call to participation is, come find me today in this meeting if you have questions about patterns that you'd like to see more broadly applied, patterns that you noted that are important to you. There's a whole host of things that come up every time I've had a conversation with anyone about this topic. And it's kind of that part of open source, which is, it really is important for people to say what they're doing, because frankly, everyone doing this stuff is much better at it and knows the trade-offs. Knowing those trade-offs actually helps us make better decisions about what we invest in, where we devote effort. I was having a talk with Keith McClellan of CockroachDB earlier. In a lot of cases, the challenges that customers are having setting up CockroachDB and hybrid environments boil down to very simple things that we can improve pretty low down the stack, that if someone brings it up, it almost always is, well, this is an obvious thing that we can do to improve how customers and partners and community members work together to find, the small wins. And actually those small wins can have big impacts. So, this is the best time possible to ask those questions.
Great. Clayton, maybe if you would mind passing your microphone up front there. And Peter, maybe if you don't mind standing just to say hi, just because I was looking at the camera angle, it'd help a little bit. But yeah.
Sure. Hey, everyone. My name is Peter Hunt. I am a senior software engineer, and I work primarily with Cryo and like the node level stuff. Sometimes run C, sometimes a kubelet, sometimes Podman if I'm feeling fun. So yeah.
All right. We'll just go down the line here.
Sure. I'm going to just remove my mask because it's hot and difficult to speak. But hey, everyone, I'm Oindrila Chatterjee. I work as a data scientist in the team AI Center of Excellence within the Office of the CTO at Red Hat. And we work on various emerging trends in AI and ML within our team. And I spent the past year working on building AI and AI ops tools for CI/CD data, while building these solutions and tools on OpenShift. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'll hand it over.
Hello, everyone. I'm Akanksha Duggal, and I'm also a data scientist in the AI Ops team at the AI Center of Excellence. I am based in Boston, and I've been working on the AI for CI project. That is a tool that helps you monitor your CI/CD processes. And I'm also a data scientist who leverages all the open source and platforms that Red Hat provides us as data scientists. So that's pretty much about me.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Hugo, and I'm part of the product team that it's part of the applications group. So we are doing all the workloads on top of OpenShift, from Kafka to API management, as you've seen in the previous session. So if you have any questions on running your applications, your integration, your APIs on Kubernetes, on OpenShift, just let us know.
Hey everyone, Andrew Block. I'm a distinguished architect with Red Hat Consulting. I work with customers across the globe to implement container solutions, OpenShift, anything. So over the course of time, I've probably seen it, the good and the bad. So if you have any questions, come on over and I'm happy to have a chat with you.
Hi, I'm Annette Cluett. I'm with the Platform Group, and recently I've been working on multi-cluster disaster recovery, especially how it applies to using like Rook stuff to do mirroring, and in particular also advanced cluster management, orchestrating all of that. Thanks.
Hi folks, Kirsten Newcomer. I lead the security pillar product management team. That includes Red Hat Advanced Cluster Security. So we focus on ensuring that OpenShift is hardened by default, that we provide automated, give you the ability to automate compliance with security and regulatory controls, with the compliance operator, continuously investing, working closely with the CTO's office on things like Keylime for attestation, SigStore, also with Andy Block on SigStore, kind of making it easier to add signing into the CI/CD process. Did somebody say slow down? Oh, okay. It was the other room. So tons of stuff, plus runtime security, working upstream with Kube Security SIG also as they work to replace pod security policies. We're going to continue to support security context constraints in OpenShift, but also work with things like Open Gatekeeper, Kyverno, and as the community evolves, the pod security, which is the new name for what's going to replace pod security policies, drives me nuts. We'll be working on that too. Runtime behavioral analysis, deep observability, all sorts of stuff coming your way. Come find me if you have questions.
Hi, I'm Karina Angel. I'm on the OpenShift product management team. I cover Cloud Paks, which are IBM is one of our largest partners, so it kind of covers a lot of areas, and the lessons that we've learned in implementing and running Cloud Paks on OpenShift have really helped the rest of the product. So you'll find areas just across OpenShift that are just better for what we have learned with Cloud Paks. And I also cover some upstream work, open cluster management. Talked about earlier today, that's going into Sandbox for CNCF. KubeVirt, a lot of people are interested in KubeVirt right now. That one we're getting into incubation. Helm, and I also work with Andy Block. So I think almost everybody knows Andy. I'm a Helm maintainer as well, and we have a talk tomorrow morning. So yeah, so cover a lot of different aspects.
Hi, I'm Daniel O. I'm technical marketing major, most likely developer advocate at Red Hat. And I spend a lot of time to evangelize the Kubernetes native application, like a Quarkus and Spring Boot, and also like a Datagrid, something like that on Kubernetes and OpenShift, of course. And also I'm responsible for CNCF ambassador, and specifically this KubeCon, I'm responsible for serverless track chair. So I'm specialized the serverless and the service mesh to integrate the cloud native application. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Daniel. So let me see. We actually got a question from the virtual. Diane fed into us from Hopin. I'm waiting for her to type it in, so I've got a pieces. But just real quick, as I told you at the beginning, my name's Stu Miniman. I joined Red Hat 1 year ago today. I'm on the OpenShift product marketing team. I do lots of executive meetings, meet with our customers. I was an analyst for a decade, so I do a lot talking to our press and analysts. If you had attended this show, I was one of the hosts of theCUBE for basically since they started that a decade ago. So exciting times. Everyone here, one of the nice things, if you made it here in person, is we have a little more bandwidth to meet and talk and go a little bit deeper. As Clayton said, this is like the hallway track that we've all been missing, and you get to do it like all week. And that's mostly who showed up here. So we really appreciate you all coming. Also, if you know people that are looking for jobs, Red Hat is hiring. There's a hiring social Thursday morning. If you hadn't heard about it, please let them know. I know the technical marketing team, we've actually got like 5 more associate level positions open. And yeah, and right, product management and engineering, there are a lot of openings, so it's good times. Please look them up and just find anybody at Red Hat. We love to help connect people and tell them that. But I did the question that came in now is, with many products interacting with each other, how to maintain the SLDC lifecycle across both product and operating system.
So yes, that's fun, and we might get Hugo to weigh in as well. I don't know. So it's a large team, and there are a lot of parts. So we do quarterly planning. We have to kind of do reasonably relative alignment between RHEL releases, right? RHEL Core OS is built from RHEL binaries. So OpenShift 4.8 uses RHEL 8.4 binaries. 4.9 will also use 8.4 binaries. 4.9 is coming out any day. And then ACM has aligned their releases with OpenShift releases. So just as Kube has gone to 3 times a year, so will OpenShift. And ACM releases typically about 2 weeks after that. ACS right now is moving from a 3-week release cadence to a 6-week release cadence. And we'll be figuring out kind of over the next year whether we're going to maintain that or get more closely aligned with OpenShift. We'll kind of see how that goes. And then most of the key components line up. So like service mesh releases pretty close to an OpenShift release. OpenShift Data Foundation is slightly different release cycle. Somebody else here might know better than I. but delayed a little bit. Annette would know.
OpenShift Data Foundation, which used to be OpenShift Container Storage, pretty much tries to line up with OpenShift, but usually we're, a little bit off, a little bit delayed compared to the OpenShift release.
So we keep working at it. We have a lot of coordination across the teams. We have a large program management team also that kind of helps with that. If there are more specific questions or individual pieces that you care about, let us know. But we do have lifecycle pages that lay this out on redhat.com, Red Hat OpenShift lifecycle. And then also it will have a reference to layered solutions.
All right. Any other questions?
Award-winning. Hi. So this might be a slightly tough questions, but you have enough people. So a few years ago, before the world changed, I remember the big discussion was Kubernetes is boring and this. And I always knew that was kind of BS because there's so much to do. And for me, I see 3 areas, and I want you guys to talk about specifically what Red Hat is trying to do. So one is like multi-tenancy and scaling. And obviously you talked about some of it, but I haven't seen anything done around multi-tenancy. So that instead of having everybody solve multi-tenancy themselves for large scale SaaS, it can be part of the system. Another one is security. And obviously there's a lot of discussion on security, but one that's sort of hot is this code signing chains, right? Like Sigstore and so on. And that's certainly, hopefully something that's already in the line. And last thing is ease of use, because every single customer I talk to, and I talk to hundreds, everybody says how difficult it is once you don't have enough experience, obviously, right? So those 2 areas, if you can speak to that.
We got the whole week to cover that one, right?
Yeah. So I'll take the first one real quick. So multi-tenancy is one of those things that, even before Kubernetes, even before we had namespaces, right? A Red Hatter helped drive the design of namespaces in Kube, quota, limit ranges. We spent a lot of time on security context constraints, pod security policy evolved. There are only certain problems that can be solved inside a Kube cluster. And so part of the talk from earlier and where we're trying to think of is what are the pieces of multi-tenancy that are useful? And you asked a very good question earlier about federation. The thing that federation lacked was any real concept of how you break apart the individual problems so that you can evolve those independently. And I'll give an example here. So if you have 70 clusters, you have 70 different versions of operators, software, API, lifecycle. You can automate those to bring them into alignment, but each one of those is a unique failure domain. And that's how Kube's designed. What I'd like to see, and I think what we're kind of gearing up is there's small efforts, medium-sized efforts, and big efforts. I want to talk about the big effort. The big effort really is to help us do API evolution at the large scale. So imagine that you have a integration that you want to roll out to, let's say, 10,000 applications. How do you roll that out safely? You need to decide who's going to test it first. How do you test it close to production? How do you roll that out in a controlled fashion? What happens when someone is using one field, one very specific combination of behavior, and you break it? What are the metrics that tell you you just broke 10% of your fleet, 15% of your applications? What if that issue only emerges later? How do you work backwards from that event? So there's a lot of problems inside a Kube cluster. CRDs, extension of Kube. We're never going to support tenancy within a cluster of APIs, different APIs for different namespaces, because it's a fundamental characteristic of Kube. And that's partially what kind of drove that higher layer question is we can take those concepts. We can take a chunk of APIs with namespaces and RBAC and all that magic with the existing Kube APIs, and we can break it up into little pieces. I think that's one of the ingredients that we need to have available, of the ability to say, I might have 10,000 teams, 100,000 teams. And like your question about scale is, increasingly organizations run the gamut. They might have one team or they might have 100,000 teams. And Kube solves a part of that problem. in open source, a lot of us actually recreate those same problems over and over again. How do we hand out resources to teams? How do you give people access to cloud account? How do you parcel out infrastructure? How do you do cost management? How do you give access to certain APIs to some people, like the ability to create clusters, and take it away from others? I would really like to, and this is a key part of our investigation in KCP, is try to break those little chunks up so you can say, I get an API space that feels cube-like, that I can do all the things in. I can add new APIs, but those are mine. Then I can go to the next level, scale them out. That's like the big change. But below that would be, okay, well, then that would help us in ACM. That would help us in Argo. That would help us in CI. How do you give people access to new types of APIs? Like maybe you get part of the API for pipelines, but not the other part. We don't have a lot of tools to control access above a cluster. And so there's an element of investment in that area. And as we go down further in the stack, there will be implications to it. But I really do think that you can't build multi-tenancy into Cube as it is without breaking too much of what we do. So we're going to try and take Cube and lift it up to that higher level.
I think that, yeah, that's a great summary. And also, we're also investing in separation of control plane and data plane, which is another significant area that enables serious multi-tenancy, right? And give our large customers the ability to have a control plane that can manage multiple cluster data planes. So existing multi-tenancy, as Clayton said, there are limitations to what we can do, but there's still a lot there. SE Linux, SCCs, RBAC, namespaces, a lot of things in place, and a lot of investment going on in Red Hat to really enhance that space. I'm going to ask Andy to talk about the SIG store question.
Read my mind. You read my mind. So, as you know, SigStore is a project that Red Hat is being, actively involved in. From a product management side, Kirsten will certainly attest to that. We're doing a lot of work within Red Hat to bring a lot of those tools into our ecosystem. So, in the future, you're going to start seeing more of those part of the product itself. Everything from the fundamental Red Hat Enterprise Linux Core OS layer, all the way up through OpenShift Container Platform, as well as the container is just one aspect of your entire software supply chain. Looking in aside from your container image, you want to also think about how are you protecting the source code? How are you packaging all your dependencies? That is just something you need to think about, and something that we'll be working with the open source community as a whole to help evolve the concept of an SBOM and other tools similar to that. So be on the lookout. Some good stuff is on the way.
I can take a little stab at that. So far, ease of use is one of the hardest problems, I think, which is what are we trying to make easy? And one of the things we often notice is there's so many different ways of making things easy. OpenShift actually, from the very beginning, was about trying to streamline that development process. That was PaaS, was really an attempt to make the first experience simple and to keep it at that high level. Unfortunately, reality is a lot messier, and the PaaS that we ended up with is this wealth of different choices. Some people may want to trade Tecton or Argo for Jenkins or a more opinionated build flow. A focus for us will be trying to bring together an experience that makes the application development story that we're all using a little bit more effective and well integrated. But I think this is a hard problem that is a combination of the need for capability within our ecosystem combined with every additional bit makes things more complex. And it's where those things intersect that it really gets hard is the power of a Tecton pipeline. Tecton pipelines are pretty darn powerful, but they can't do everything. When you need to cross out of that, how much do you abstract pipelines for your organization? And I think we're always looking at this. Our focus probably in the near to midterm is trying to build experiences around those common paths that I mentioned, looking for ways of, what are the common patterns that work for 75-80% of users, and really drilling down on experiences that try to hide details that are there. And if everybody stopped asking for new exciting features that make all this stuff, I think this would get easier. But then that would be boring, as you said, and we wouldn't have much to do. And we wouldn't go to KubeCon because there'd be no point.
I'm going to add to that. So with each release, we have a lot of product managers and a lot of engineering teams, right? Just covering the entire platform. With each release, as Kubernetes is maturing, as OpenShift continues to mature, that gives the teams opportunities to further make it simpler, right? Because hard is easy.
That's the
Soundbite.
quote of the week, I
Right?
think.
Thank you, thank you. And easy is actually very difficult. So yeah, like I said, like each release, every team is looking at this, and you can see it with each time, like 4.9, when you start playing with it, you'll see like there's different aspects that are easier. I talked earlier about how Argo, like just the UI is just simplifying the different UIs and not having to go different places to do things. Yeah, and it's that across the entire platform. Um, so just wanted to add that.
We did get another question online from courtesy of Diane. It ties in a little bit to some of this, but something we all look at is developers. What do they need to be aware of and think about for future fixes? This question specifically asking about security risk and vulnerabilities. What container images they're using in building and vulnerability drift at runtime. So I think a couple of our presentations today on GitOps covered a little bit of it, but yeah, sure. Andy, Kirsten, first.
I'll start,
Rock,
and,
paper,
and
scissors.
Andy, I'm sure will weigh in. So one of the things we talk about internally a certain amount is that is the state of vulnerability scanners. Which is frankly a challenge, right? One of the things folks are dealing with is an overwhelming amount of vulnerability data that comes out of scanning an image, et cetera. And so there are a couple of angles to take. One is for the developer, the earlier you can find the information, the easier it is to fix. So using things like IDE plugins with sneak data available to you with your, from Red Hat with your OpenShift subscription really can help. Yes, you want to use image scanners on your images that are stored in your registry, ideally a certified image scanner so that you get Red Hat data if you're using a Red Hat base image as part of your custom build. That'll give you data that links to fixes as well, but it's still overwhelming. So there's a supplement you can look at. Like if you can leverage something like Red Hat Advanced Cluster Security or some of our other security partners that give you runtime behavioral analysis and runtime context. I mean, you don't want to wait until then, but leverage that data, use it on your test cluster. Right? Don't wait till production. Use those tools in your test cluster so you can see which vulnerability, which pods are actually exposed to the internet, if it were going to be exposed to the internet, right? And contextualize and get a little bit more information to help inform your focus and do some risk assessment.
I work with a lot of development teams at different organizations, and one of the key challenges I see is they're just getting into containerization still. I mean, some of us in the room, they've been doing containers for many years. Some organizations still are at their infancy or pretty young in them. The challenge we see is that you involve the security team too late, which is where you cause your developers to bang their heads on the desk multiple times because they will spend hours and hours developing the best code ever. It works fine in development, etc. They don't actually turn on scanning until they hit towards production, and then they realize, oh, all that time that I wasted building my container perfectly has a vulnerability because I did X, Y, and Z incorrectly. If you tell them ahead of time using tools like Kirsten mentioned, IDE plugins, scanning tools, make it easier for developers to become self-sufficient as well as self-aware so they can better themselves, because anything that they can do to get the process down faster, get releases out faster, will then make their product managers even happier.
I was actually going to touch on a point there. So talking about moving things left in the pipeline, one of the things I think has been most successful about open source is when we pick technologies and patterns that actually force ourselves to, they both make a problem more obvious and they make it easy for us to get in our path. And so a lot of the things that move security left is you're taking a lot of frustration among a few people early and you're distributing it all the way out to the people who actually ultimately are the ones who are going to have to make the calls on what makes that sense. And so I think a lot of the process when we talk about ease of use is, can we get a commonality where people see this kind of information early in their process? IDs is a great place for it. Can you move the problem to closer to the actual person who's affected? Sometimes that means that the net annoyance is actually higher than one security person who's at the end of the day trying to make things, but it scales better. And ultimately that frees that security person to go deal with the actual problems like real vulnerabilities, improving the process. So again, a lot of what we can do in open source is help build in these parts of our process to the tools and the technologies so that we don't ask the question, should I scan? It happens automatically.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone on the panel, the speakers today, and everybody participating today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so just give us a minute to do a quick, set change. Any of the speakers that want to grab a chair on the way off would be appreciated. And I'm going to hand the mic off to just a slightly taller but still in red shoes, host for the next piece. So stay with us for a second. Thank you.
I'm right here. How do we get it up? I'm right here. How do we get it up? Hello. Check, 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 check. Hello. Can you hear me in left field? Kong, you can hear me in left field? Sistig, can you hear me in right field? We got Sistig over there in right field. Straight in the back there, we got armorsec.io. Can you hear me out center field? You can, okay, great. This next section is called our partner lightning rounds. My name is Michael Waite. I work at Red Hat, and I'm told that the camera is following me. So Diane, if you're streaming this, and I believe you are, to more than 55 countries around the world live right now, the camera is following me around the stage. So I work with Red Hat, and I drive marketing activities with our partners that have certified software that run on the OpenShift platform. So when our customers want to use a container platform like OpenShift, they've got the certified software that they need to run their business and modernize their IT application infrastructure. I'd like to call out a couple of our really good friends that are here today. They're standing there in the back. Some of them are sitting. Turbonomic, you're not there. That's embarrassing. When everybody sees, her name's Molly Gibbons. And by the way, Molly Gibbons is hosting a party this evening, I believe with 2 other companies. You better make sure you give Molly a huge you-know-what for embarrassing me on stage here for the first one. Antando, where are you? Right there. I'm sorry, what? Hello, Antando. J-Frog, are you here? We have J-Frog right next to them. Sistig over there in the corner in right field. armorsec.io right there in center. Avocado Systems, you're right there in center field too. Kong, over there in left field. Tigera, also over there in left field. Profit Store, also over there in left field. Robin.io, right in center field. We put together some what I like to call lightning rounds. We wanted to do something really fun. We're giving our partners 5 minutes each to talk about why you should care about running OpenShift in your environment and modernizing your application infrastructure with software like theirs and ours. but it goes a little bit beyond that. Some of our partners are actually doing a raffle for fabulous, fabulous prizes. Ontando, do you folks have a raffle here for our attendees? Ontando is giving away the Quantum Starter Bundle. In order to win that, we're going to do a drawing, and yes, I'm from New England, on stage here after. You have to stop by the Ontando. We're going to call it a booth. Believe me, this has been challenging times. Please stop by the Ontando booth. Who else has got a raffle? Kong, you have a raffle. What are you offering up? So $500 Airbnb gift card. Stop by the Kong booth, drop your card in the fishbowl, scan the badge or whatever it is they want you to do. Please don't be shy. This is not going to be people standing up here saying, okay, and now I want to go to slide number 27, where I talk about the this is going to be like a fun, lightning, fast rounds. Stop by Kong, join their thing. I don't have my glasses on. Hold on. I can't even see that. Hold on, let's try this again. Profit Store, you're having a raffle for people? The newest version iPad 2021 Twin Turbo. Stop by, talk to our good friends from Profit Store, put your thingamajig in their gift bowl. We're going to do the drawings here on stage. Anybody else that I missed? Right there, Cockroach Labs. Cockroach Labs, Jim Walsh, Joe Gomes, two very good friends of mine. What are you folks raffling off today? I'm sorry, can we get a microphone over to Joe? We can't hear him. Cockroach Labs, for the people who are streaming around the world, is giving away $3 for every person who does something for, I can't hear you. Get scanned. They're going to donate $3 for women's charity organizations. Okay. I hope I didn't miss anyone. And ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, I hope the audio visual is going to work and it's not going to go just blue screen of death or whatever, but let's get it started here. Okay. Can we get a little volume in the back, please? I didn't miss anyone. And ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, I hope the audio visual is going to work and it's not going to go just blue screen of death or whatever, but let's get it started here. Okay. Can we get a little volume in the back? Miss anyone, ladies and gentlemen. Hold on. Can we please? Without any further ado, I hope the audio visual is going to work and it's not going to go just blue screen of death. All right. Let's get it started here. So first, Turbonomics stood me up, and I tried putting them on the podium. Now we have a major technical problem, and I put a lot of effort. A lot of us put a lot of effort in. We reached out to all the partners that are in the lightning rounds, and I reached out to Suda from Yugabyte. Where are you? Suda, just, that's fine. That's fine. I want you to understand what it's like to send an email to Keith McClellan, Cockroach Labs, and say, this is like, hold on. Let's try this one more time. I'm actually not supposed to be up here this long. Reaching out to our partners from Yugabyte, and I'm like, Suda, I need you to take a picture of you in a superhero pose. And he was like, do I need to put on a uniform or an outfit? I'm like, no, I just need pictures like, like this or like this. So we got all of our partners to send in a picture of their speaker doing their superhero pose, and this is the combined output here. We call this the lightning rounds. Can we please have some volume? See, we're in Los Angeles. There's like a movie trailer theme. I know that was only like 45 seconds, but that was literally 4 weeks worth of work to pull that together. And there was a tremendous amount of cat herding, as any of the people that were in that will attest to. And it's playing again because it's so good. So now from the Hoppin', it's still playing. We're just gonna stop it. All right, just if you could just make it stop. So we're gonna get started. We have our first customer dialing in from, if dialing in is the right word, from Malaysia, using the Hoppin' platform. And we tested it and it all works. And ladies and gentlemen, we're going to welcome Lee.